Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
2020 presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren.
Senator
Welcome.
Elizabeth Warren.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
Elizabeth, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
What about Liz?
Liz, I like that.
All right.
All right.
What's
I'm
happening,
ready.
Liz?
Oh, man, we're out there having fun.
Fun? Let's start off with why get into this race.
Yeah, why should Liz be running for president?
Because there is so much change we need to make in this country, and 2020 is our big chance to do it. You know, I think of 2020 as this is going to decide the direction this country goes for generations to come. And, man, we've come to the fork in the road here.
Right.
Is it really a fork in the road? Or we just know we're going in the wrong direction?
Yeah.
It's not really a fork.
Well, you know, but that's the point, is we got to make choices. It's not just not Trump. I get that. You know, we're all on board, or not all of us, but I mean, a bunch of folks are on board for that. But it's okay. So what direction are we going to go from there? Because you got to think about what's been broken for how long in a country to end up with a guy like Donald Trump as president of the United States.
What are some things that alarm you the most right now?
Oh, God. It's how much division and hate he stirs up, how he embraces the racists, the nativists, the sexists. You know, it's like everybody. It's find
like so
somebody
many
to
people
hate
embrace
on.
that, though, too. I look at everything like being with the women's right to choose right now, and so many different states passing all these policies, and that's alarming to me.
Yes, it is. It's very alarming, and it's alarming because it's right now. It's gaining momentum. It's not one, and then everybody said, "Whoa, back off." It's like one, and then the next state says, "Oh, we can do better than that. You know, we can go further than that. We can push harder than that." And you're just watching them roll up one after another after another. And here's the thing. Here's what keeps getting me about this. We live in a democracy, right? I mean, at least
Supposed to be.
that's the theory, right, behind it. The overwhelming majority of people do not want to see us overturn Roe versus Wade. You know, and it's true on one thing after another. I proposed a wealth tax. Overwhelming majority of people say, that's a great idea. And I'm not just talking Democrats. I'm talking Democrats, Republicans, independents. Overwhelming majority of people think we ought to help cancel student loan debt.
Explain to people what wealth tax is if they first time they just heard you say it. What is the wealth tax?
Okay, so anybody who owns a home has been paying a wealth tax. It's just called a property tax, right? The difference for me is what I want to see us do across this country is to say to the top 1/10 of 1%, that's the fortunes over $50 million, that your 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to pitch in 2 cents in a tax.
This is after you make $50 million.
That's not make it. This is your fortune. This is your fortune. You got to pitch in 2 cents, and then 2 cents on every dollar after that.
So a 2% tax if you make over $50 million.
If you've got over $50 million. And just understand, that's the top 1/10 of 1%. And this is your accumulated assets everywhere.
Right.
It's your real estate, but it's also your diamonds and your stock portfolio, your Rembrandts, your yachts, whatever you've got, 2 cents. And here's the deal. If that top 1/10 of 1%, that's about 75,000 families in this country, pitched in 2 cents, you want to know what we could do with it? You ready? Get out your pencil.
Buy Amazon?
You ready? You could do universal child care for every baby in this country, age 0 to 5. Universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old. Raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher to a professional level. Provide universal tuition-free technical school 2-year college and 4-year college for every kid. Put $50 billion into the HBCUs.
I'm with you.
And cancel student loan debt for 95% of those who've got student loan debt. And knock back the whole opioid crisis by putting $100 billion into that. Think how much money that is.
That's a lot of money.
Think how many lives you could touch.
If it's that easy, why don't people just do it?
Well, that's what I'm out here fighting for. No, but that's my point. That's why I'm in this fight. You ask me why I'm in this fight? We make that change. Think how America looks different for so many people. That'd be about 43 million Americans who would see student loan debt canceled. And by the way, I just want to point out on that one, Black kids getting ready to go to school, more likely to borrow money to go to college.
I did.
Borrow more money when they're in college, and have more trouble paying the debt when they get out of college. You do this one thing that I'm talking about. Put this 2-cent wealth tax in, and then make these changes in the law, take that 2 cents and reinvest it in America. And we would see the black-white wealth gap in America start to close.
You know what's crazy about that? I just got robbed about a week ago from the IRS, right? They robbed me, took all my money. And then I look at Amazon.
Yeah.
$11.2 billion, and they pay nothing in federal taxes?
Yep. So if anybody who's listening to this paid $1 in taxes last year, or this past year, you paid more than Amazon. So Amazon gets up and announces publicly that they made $11.2 billion in profits, right? And they set their executive compensation on that. They do all of their investors. They tell investors, oh, this is how we're doing. And then they turn around to the IRS and say, oh, well, we actually meant to say zero because that's how much we're paying. And in fact, they had the goal to actually ask for some tax refunds, right? To get some, so they actually made money from the IRS. So, I got a plan for that one too.
Let's hear this plan.
You want to break up? You want to break up? You want to break up all that stuff, right?
I do, but you want to talk about the tax part first?
Yeah,
let's do the tax part first, just while we're on money here still. So here's my proposal for companies like Amazon, companies that make more than $100 million a year. A lot of money. Okay? Whatever they say publicly, these are audited financial statements that they get out, and they make a statement, as they do annually, to the investor public. Whatever they say are their profits, then they have to pay 7% of that just across the board in taxes. Don't tell me about your deductions. Don't tell me about your exceptions. Don't tell me about your loopholes. 7%.
Right.
But then they can lie, though, right?
No.
You don't want to lie to investors because you also want investors to want to continue to see your companies doing well and say, this is what we made.
Bingo. And they want to set their executive compensation on how much they announce publicly. So they have every incentive. That's the accurate number from their point of view, from the investor public's point of view. So my view is, why not just let the taxpayer say, well, you know what? We'll take that number too. And we want 7%. Now, you ready for the kind of money that will raise over 10 years? It's about $1 trillion. Again, that's money we can reinvest here in America. That's money we can build a country here that doesn't just work for this thin slice at the top, but a country that works for everybody.
I got a lot of questions about that. Number one, some people say Amazon, when they don't pay taxes, it enables them to hire more people, so they be able to create more jobs. Is that true?
Why don't you do that? Why don't you just say, I tell you what, you quit paying taxes,
and then
you'll hire more people, and I'll do the same. You want to do the same?
They'll still have enough money to hire people, even if they pay taxes on $11 billion.
Of course they will. Because that's the whole point. They still want to pay the taxes because that gives them more money to be able to distribute to their
let's be real. None of us like paying taxes.
Of course. I get it. But the difference is you haven't been able to lobby Congress nearly as successfully to get a bunch of loopholes and tricks and openings so that you don't have to pay.
And you know what?
I
don't mind paying if I know what my money's going for.
And that's the problem. We don't know who the hell FICA is now. We don't know where our tax money going now.
Yeah. Well, that's why I want to do my 2% wealth tax and say, I'll tell you exactly where I'm going to spend that money. I'll account for all the nickels in it, and where those nickels are going to go is in making this country work. Wait, think of it this way. On the wealth tax, it's not trying to punish anybody. It's just trying to get a level playing field. Last year, all in, the top, or let's do the 99%. The 99% paid about 7.2% of their total wealth in taxes, in all the taxes they paid. The top 1%, they paid about 3.2%. So, the 99% is paying more than double. So this is about
get richer.
leveling the playing field. And then the other part is to say, look, you built a great fortune. You had this fabulous idea. You worked hard. Good for you. Or you inherited it, whichever. But you got this fortune. Good for you. No one wants to be punitive. But that fortune was built in part using workers all of us help pay.
The
to
99%.
educate. That's right. It was built in part getting your goods to market on roads and bridges. All of us help pay for. It was built in part protected by police and firefighters. Everybody paid to keep in the field. And we're all glad to make those investments. But what we're saying is when you make it super big, when you're the top 0.1% put in 2 cents so everybody else in this country gets it.
You said something so real. Well, you said something so real. I was reading, and this really connects to a lot of, especially our people, minorities. You said that growing up that, your father couldn't work.
Yeah.
And you said that your mother was able to get a job at Sears.
Yeah.
And was able to really hold down the house and really pay the bills. And you said at this day and age, that could never happen.
That's right.
And there's a lot of women out there that are working more than Sears jobs and can't pay their mortgage.
Now, you see, that's the big difference. So when I was a girl and my daddy had a heart attack, he's out of work for a long, long time. We lose the family station wagon. We're about to lose the house. And I still remember the morning I walk into their bedroom and out on the bed is the dress, the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. My mother's crying. She's walking around saying, we will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. She was 50 years old. She never worked outside the home, and she was terrified. But she pulls that dress on, puts on her high heels. She walks to the Sears and gets a full-time minimum wage job. That full-time minimum wage job would pay a mortgage. It would pay utilities. It would put food on the table.
What was the wage back then?
That's right. Oh, I don't know what it was, adjusted. But the point was, today, a full-time minimum wage job will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. And the difference, why the difference? Because when I was a girl, the question asked in Washington is, what does it take a family of 3 to survive? What does it take to give them a toehold in America's middle class, a chance where they can build from there? Today, the question asked in Washington is, what's the minimum wage that will maximize the profits of giant multinational corporations? I want a government that doesn't work for giant multinational corporations. I want a government that works for our families. And the minimum wage is just one of the best places to see that. People who work every bit as hard as my mother worked, harder than my mother worked, they can't hold it together because the minimum wage is just not enough.
Do any of these giant corporations support you? I'm just curious. I know you're not taking money from them, but are any of them openly saying, I support Elizabeth Warren and her ideas?
I don't know, but I think there are some who at least are open to the idea that the rich ought to be paying, that we ought to be making more investments in all of our kids, that we ought to be angling toward a future. But, let's face it, I'm not at the top of the list for let's make big campaign contributions for a lot of them.
I mean, because you're challenging a lot of the companies. You said you want to break a lot of things up. You want to break up Facebook. You want to break up Amazon. What does that mean?
Okay, so think about it this way. We have these tech giants, and Amazon's a great example. They run 2 businesses. The first one is called the platform. That's the part you see, and that's the part where you go to shop for things and sellers who are trying to reach.
My wife does.
Yeah, exactly.
Too many boxes on the porch.
All right, there you go.
So
and
it's other sellers. It's not Amazon branded, but it's them selling other people's
So
products.
they're just doing the platform. They're like the marketplace. And just so you understand how important that marketplace is, Walmart does about 9% of all retail sales in America go through Walmart. About 49% of all online sales go through Amazon. So, this is huge, right? Okay, so they run this platform. Good for them. It's a place where you can get delivery tomorrow and lots of boxes on your porch. Okay, I'm ready. They also run a second line of businesses, and that is every one of those transactions that takes place, every time somebody clicks on and says, oh, look at this cute place that's doing pet cookies, doggy cookies. I'm going to get
Gotta be the
that.
dog, right?
That's right. That's right. They capture that information. And then they start to watch and say, oh, you've got this really profitable business over there running cute little doggy cookies.
Right.
And then Amazon says, I think we can run a doggy cookie business. Move you back to page 7 when you're looking up, doggy treats, and move the Amazon, even though it doesn't have the name Amazon on it, the Amazon store that they have just put online up to the front of your search. That gives them an enormous competitive advantage. So here's how I think of this. Kind of like baseball, right? You can be the umpire. That is, you can run the marketplace, or you can have a team in the game. That is, you can be running businesses that compete on that platform. But you can't do both at the same time. Right. So when I say break them up, I'm saying pull that apart. And here's who that works for. Just so you know, you'll still be able, or your wife will still be able to go to Amazon and do all the boxes and shopping she wants. But all those little stores that are trying to compete for your attention, now it's a level playing field.
Right.
And it's not that Amazon knows everything and nobody else knows anything and Amazon can favor itself. It's now the case everybody's on a level playing field. And if you got the best doggy cookies out there, then by golly, you can keep selling
Would
them.
you feel the same way if you were the head of Amazon? If somebody came in and said, I want to break up your business because you're winning so much, but I got to slow you down so other people can keep up?
No, the point is not to slow you down. The point is to say you got to compete on a level playing field. If you have a fabulous idea for a business, good for you. Go get them. But you don't get to take advantage of your platform to gather information that nobody else gets.
That's like monopolizing.
That's the point. That's exactly right. And
But isn't that the American way?
no,
There's all kinds of
America been
regulations.
monopolizing for years.
no, but we have laws against that.
Right, even
And the
television
job
networks.
of government is to push back against that so that small businesses, so that innovators can get a chance to get a foothold, and if they've got a better idea, to get out there and
So it
push
needs to be regulated, not necessarily. You're not trying to break them up per se. It's
No.
regulation.
I really want to break them apart.
Jesus.
No, man. Look, we've done this throughout history. Go back. Teddy Roosevelt. Remember Teddy Roosevelt?
I mean, I didn't know him personally.
Well, you didn't know him personally. Okay, but the trust buster, right? That's what Teddy Roosevelt did. He broke up those big trusts. He said, Standard Oil, nope, too much here, got to break it apart.
Gotcha.
And then there were a whole lot more competitive businesses.
Right.
Then antitrust enforcement kind of drops off, and then we hit the 1920s, right, the Gilded Age. We make all these bazillionaires. And then Franklin Roosevelt comes in, and he says, you know what? We need some antitrust enforcement here. And they break up some of the businesses, the big ones again. And that goes on till about the 1980 or so. Gosh, who got elected then? And then the Republicans say deregulate. And I have to say, a lot of Democrats went along with them. And you see antitrust enforcement drop back. And now it's one industry after another. You've got big tech, where it's dominated by just a handful of industries. And here's what happens. When it's dominated, the area around it is known as the dead zone, because little businesses that try to compete will just get wiped out.
Yeah.
They kill them off early. Big ag, same kind of thing goes on. You see small farms, independent farms, family farms struggling because the giant agriculture businesses come in and just absorb. If there's profit to be made, they figure out how to do it. Financial, right here, right in New York, you see that one, where you end up with a handful of giant financial institutions. Why can small businesses, why do minority-owned businesses have so dang much trouble getting access to capital? Part of it is those small banks are getting squeezed out by the giants. They're getting bought up, they're getting eaten up, and it has effects.
That and the banks don't want to lend to us because of the certain areas that it is.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's the financial version of redlining.
I have no problem with any of this if the money actually does go to these poor and disenfranchised communities.
Then let's do it.
Word.
Now,
I
let's talk-
want to clear up some stuff because
Sure.
there's a lot of criticism that's said about you. So I want to give you the opportunity to speak on these things. The Native American thing. Do you regret taking the DNA test?
Look, I can't go back, but
You know, you got to explain to a lot of people that don't know. Now, you came out and said that you were Native American. And,
long ago.
And they
Yep.
found out that you weren't. And people were very upset about that.
This ain't for the people who don't know.
No, but a lot of people
We
don't
don't
know
have that much time.
because we're putting people up to her as well. So go ahead.
So I grew up in Oklahoma. I learned about my family the same way most people learn about their family, from my mama and my daddy and my aunts and my uncles. And it's what I believe. But I'm not a person of color. I'm not a citizen of a tribe. And I shouldn't have done it.
If you had a chance to do it over, would you?
I can't go back, but I shouldn't have. But what I can do is try to be a good partner. And that's what I do every day. So, for example, in the things we're talking about here, what I want to see us do in education is I want to see us get rid of the student loan debt and make an investment in the historically black colleges and universities. I want to see us in housing, hit redlining head on. I've got the first housing proposal to just smack straight into that. I want to see us in healthcare, address healthcare disparities, and particularly maternal mortality rates
Right.
for black women. We got serious problems.
I seen you talk
we
about
need to
reparations
attack.
as well.
Yeah,
So what, your family told you were Native American?
yeah.
Charlamagne tells me I'm Dominican, but I don't believe him.
You are. How long did you hold on to that? Because there was some reports that said you were a Native American on your Texas bar license, and that you said you were a Native American on some documents when you were a professor at Harvard. Like, why'd you do that?
So it's what I believe. That's, like I said, it's what I learned from my family.
When did you find out you weren't?
Well, I'm not a person of color. I'm not a citizen of a tribe. And tribal citizenship is an important distinction and not something I am. So,
Was there any benefits to that?
no. Boston Globe did a full investigation. It never affected, nothing about my family ever affected any job I ever got.
You didn't get a discount in college? No.
You kind of like the original Rachel Dolezal a little bit. Rachel Dolezal was a white woman pretending to be black.
No, this is what I learned from my family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about for the dreamers out there? For as you see, your president is locking them up and sending them back. What do you say to the dreamers? What's your plan for the dreamers?
It's so heartbreaking to see all these kids that are dying.
He said you're
being
president too,
detained.
by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
He tried you just now.
try me.
He tried
yeah.
you, Miss Liz.
Yeah, I got that. Not going there.
And all this fear that's being instilled in people that aren't familiar with people of other races and other religions, and people just have this fear of something that's different.
Yeah, what's the plan for the dreamers?
So, look, we need a comprehensive plan here. But for me, we got to protect the dreamers, and they got to have a path to citizenship, and you don't break up their families. But it's also true for the people who are here, who aren't citizens. We got to find a path to citizenship. This makes no sense at all. And we are a country for which immigration is not our weakness, it's our strength.
Right.
This is what
This
makes
country
us.
is based on.
Yeah. And it's a part of how we build on our differences. I think of it as if everybody is the same, you miss a lot.
Right.
You miss a lot. And this is a chance every time. The people who come here, whether it's come here fleeing for their lives or come here to try to build something better economically, that's part of what makes us stronger. I went down to the border. It's been, probably about a year ago right now. When it first came out about separating mamas from their babies. And picture an Amazon warehouse, only it's dirty and it smelled bad. And I walk in, and on the left, it's cage after cage after cage of men, about 10 feet wide, about 40 feet deep, toilet back in the corner. And they're just jammed one after another after another. Same thing on the right, only cages of women. Then you walk into the main space, and there are these huge freestanding cages out in the middle of little girls.
Jesus.
Oh,
That
and then
sounds
another
awful.
freestanding little boys. I talked to the place where the nursing mamas were, and I talked to this one woman, and she said that she had given a drink of water to a police officer, and somebody had seen it and reported to the gangs that she was helping the cops. And they gave the word back to her that someone had told this. And she said, I knew that I'd be killed.
Oh my God.
And she wraps up her baby in the middle of the night, and they run for the border and end up being picked up at our border. You know, we need an immigration system that keeps us safe, but that reflects our values.
Right.
And a system where you can't tell the difference between a criminal, a terrorist, and a 12-year-old girl, or a mama with a little nursing baby.
Someone seeking asylum.
Someone seeking asylum. Come on. And the fact that this administration, their whole plan seems to have been, how can we impose more pain on people who are already in pain? That's not who we are, or at least not who we should want to be.
So you don't want to help build the wall. You're against the wall.
No, that wall, come on, that's not about, but it's not about security. That wall is about hatred.
Absolutely.
It's about building a monument to hate and division.
It's a sign.
It is. And it is designed to be a sign. That's the whole point.
What were your views back in the day? Because if I read correctly, you were a Republican up until the mid-'90s, I think until 96.
Something like that. Nah. I just wasn't politically active. I
So
didn't grow up.
you weren't a Republican?
No, I was registered.
Okay.
But I wasn't politically active. I've always been in the policy end of it, what we need to be doing. I got into the policy end of it in the fight around families who go broke and how to protect those families, and what ultimately turned into what I think of as the bankruptcy wars, where credit card companies tried to make it a lot harder for families who had serious medical problems or who had gotten cheated by mortgage companies get a chance to put themselves right.
So what made you register as Republican back then? Because that's the Reagan years, that's the war on drugs.
Like I said, I just wasn't politically active, one way or the other. But I'll tell you, when I got into the fight on bankruptcy, and I looked around and realized that all of the Republicans lined up with the credit card companies, and shoot, half the Democrats did. But the only folks who were willing to stand and fight were folks like Paul Wellstone and Ted Kennedy. And
Was your
that's
family
when
Republican? Is that why? Like sometimes you do it, your family
register?
registers?
When I say we weren't active, I actually don't even know.
Okay.
I don't even know how
You
they
had
were
a lot of
registered.
confusion back in the day, Ms. Warren. You thought you was Native American. You thought you was Republican. Like when did you get on the right track? You got to a fork in the road at some point.
Yeah. You know, a big part of it was when I got into the fights over, you got to make the law reflect our values. You got to have a law that doesn't just work for those at the top, but that works for everyone else. You know, I'll tell you, you asked the question earlier about my mother and growing up. I always thought when I watched my mother cry and she was scared we were going to lose the house, and I watched, it took a lot of courage for her because she'd never done anything like that, to pull that dress on and to walk to the Sears to get a full-time job, that she'd always stayed home. And I always thought that was just the lesson she taught me, her daughter, that no matter how hard it is, no matter how scared you are, when it comes down to it, you reach down deep, you find what you have to find, and you take care of the people you love. It was a lot later that I came to understand not only that it was what millions of people across this country do, but it's also a lesson about government. And a government that's on the side of working people, a government that makes it easier for people to unionize, makes a minimum wage job, something that'll support people. A government that says if you're trying to get an education, we'll help you. Or a government that says if you got kids, it's not just kids born into privilege who should actually get a chance in this life. It's all our kids. We should make that investment in childcare and pre-K for every one of them. It's when I started to see that. I think that's the big change.
You think a lot of that has to do with the fact America was never designed that way? Like America was really designed for white males to succeed. It was never designed for anybody else, really.
Yeah, and we've watched the effects of that. for a long time. I mean, you know, you'd mentioned it earlier about reparations. My view on this one is, look, we are a country that was built on the principle of liberty, but on the backs of enslaved people.
Yes, indeed.
And then you watch generation after generation after generation where it's not just discrimination socially, it's part of official government policy. So into the 1960s, it was official government policy in this country to subsidize the purchase of homes. That's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. Good way to build wealth for middle-class families, to subsidize the purchase of homes for white people, but not for black people, to say that black people are going to be cut out of that. That's into the 1960s, right? And it was done, of course, through redlining, to say we'll help subsidize mortgages everywhere else, but not in areas that are redlined. And the redlined areas, of course, were black and brown neighborhoods. And here's the thing. The civil rights laws in the 1960s then get passed, as you know, in the mid-60s. And it outlaws, among other things, outlaws housing discrimination, outlaws employment discrimination, enhances voting rights. Law matters because what happens almost immediately is that black home ownership starts to go up. And here's the thing. White home ownership starts to go up too. But black home ownership is going up at a faster rate. So the gap is starting to close. So government can help. Government on your side can help. But then, long around the late 90s, these big financial institutions look around and they say, dang, there's a lot of wealth in black communities. Black homeowners have a lot of equity built up. They're really starting to build something here. Let's go try out some mortgages on those folks. And so those subprime mortgages you heard all about?
Fluctuating mortgages.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Big Short.
Start at 2%, and then it goes to 15%.
Yep,
They lose
exactly
the house. The government
right.
takes the house. The white man, that's an investor, takes all the property and then charges us to live in Harlem, Brooklyn, Detroit, and those Chicago areas.
That's right. And you know, of course, where they started. They started in black and brown neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Peddling them, and here's the thing, peddling them to people who already had homes. So it wasn't even this business about, people were trying to get into homes that they didn't really deserve. No, they started out with people who already owned homes, stripping out the wealth that they had accumulated when they took these homes away from folks. And what did our government do during that? Covered its ears, covered its eyes. This is a period of time. You want to talk about when I was really in the
Filled
fight.
out the banks.
I kept saying, this is going to bring us all down. You got to stop this. And of course, eventually, the banks took it national. I mean, they took it to all the neighborhoods.
Took our houses.
They socked it to everybody.
We lost credit. Our credit was low, and then we couldn't get houses again, and we lost all the property, lost our areas. And then they said, okay, we're going to create opportunity zones for us, but more investors are taking advantage of those opportunity zones than minorities.
Yep. And that's what worries me about it. So what I've tried to think about in the plans I've put together is, how is it that you actually make sure the benefit goes where it needs to go? And sometimes it's targeted. So, for example, over 100 years ago, across America, state and federal government is investing in universities. At big state universities, that makes it cheap to go to school.
Right.
I took advantage of one of those schools.
State schools.
University of Houston. I graduated from a school that cost $50 a semester.
Sheesh.
But a bunch of those schools kept out black kids, right?
Yep.
So as you know, black community then builds through its own charity, through its churches, through people who pitch in money.
Entrepreneurship.
That's right. Entrepreneurship builds the historically black colleges and
HBCUs.
universities. But they're always under-resourced. So one side is getting government money and government help and lots of promotion, and the other side's just not getting much and on really thin margins. So part of my plan on that 2 cents is to put at least $50 billion into the historically black colleges and universities so they get a little leveling of the playing field again here to be able to provide the kind of educational opportunities that they've been doing it on, you can't even call it a shoestring. It's like a thread because they haven't had the resources to do it.
And what
does reparations look like for you? Because I hear you say, hey, black people need reparations, but what does that look like?
What's the plan for that?
Because you got a plan for everything.
We got a plan. So the plan here has already started in the House and has already been introduced. I think it's got about 100.
HR 40?
Yeah, got about 100 co-sponsors. I support this. And the idea on this one is to say it's a complicated problem on both who gets it and what it's going to look like.
Why is it complicated?
Well, because experts who've been dealing with this for a long time, who've been trying to talk through what they think are the best ways to go about this, they have different points of view on how to do it. So what this says is let's put together a commission, bring in the experts, and let's really push a more national, bigger, more front and centered conversation about this.
I don't think it should be a conversation. I think that America systemically did things to put black and brown people in a terrible place, and they need to systemically do something to get us out.
I think that's right, but the question is what?
Yeah, what are they doing? And
I mean,
who's getting...
the same way we can figure out how to skim 2 cents off all of these, or whatever that. What was it? 2 cents.
2 cents.
Yeah.
Off the wealth tax.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Because 90% of those people their companies probably were built off the backs of slaves, more than likely.
So the point is, though, you got to figure out what is the right way to do the plan. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of folks who work in this field, and I respect their work, who come at this from very different angles on how to look at it. Some say on cash payments. Some say, no, you want to invest in communities, and you want to make this a community-centered
Maybe it's a
approach.
Combination of those things.
It may
I
be,
would say.
but that's
right.
That's
So
why you
maybe
got to push
still.
this. That's why you got to push get it started, get a commission going, get people out there talking about it.
And what
Now,
about
Liz,
legalizing marijuana? And the reason I asked that is, with the opioid crisis, everybody is so careful and they care so much about the opioid crisis.
Well, that's because it's affecting young white kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with marijuana, there's so many of us that have been arrested, got locked up, have records, are still in jail, and it's legalized in a bunch of places. Yeah. What's your stance on that?
Okay, so I'm for legalization and for expunging records for people that's been the only thing that they've gotten pulled in on. And look, a big part of it is exactly as you say. It also has had a real racial dimension to it.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
The best evidence says blacks and whites use marijuana at about the same rates,
right.
but blacks are far more likely to be arrested than whites are. So I'm for full legalization. I also have a bill right now to say, this is one of those you'll try anything you try to get there part way.
Right.
I've got one co-sponsored with a Republican that says if the state has legalized it, then the federal government backs off, and the state's legalization, in effect, now controls. It's not as good as doing it all the way across the country, but it's at least a start.
You know what I like about you? I like the fact that you have a plan for everything. But do you think that Democrats are making the mistake of always talking about Trump and impeaching Trump instead of actually talking about the issues more? Because I feel like we should be elevating the things that you're saying in the media more than talking about impeaching Trump.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to make me vote. I'm not going to vote just because you're anti-Trump.
Right. So, look, that's why I got in this, is for the plans, is to talk about what's broken, how we can fix it, and how we got to build a grassroots movement to make this happen. That's why I'm here. That's what I think it should be about, because I do think it's about what's going to happen to us generation after generation, even after Trump is gone.
Climate change, we have to worry about that.
Yes,
how is
we
that gonna
do.
affect the future?
Yes, we do.
Liz, when you first announced you were running in February, and up until now, at first they said, okay, there's no way, it's a long shot. But now it's seeming like people are like, okay, Elizabeth is really in this, and it feels like something can really happen. What do you attribute that change to?
I keep getting out and talking about the plans. And I get out and talk to people. I made a decision at the beginning of my campaign when I first decided I was going to jump into this. I didn't, try to test a bunch of stuff. I just jumped in to fight for what I believe in. But I made the decision I wasn't going to go off and ask a bunch of billionaires or corporate PACs to fund me to do this, that I was going to spend my time with people. And I was going to ask folks to chip in, to go to ElizabethWarren.com and put in $5, $10, volunteer an hour, but to build a grassroots movement, to be a part of this from the very beginning. And it's happening. So I'll give you an example. the student loan debt cancellation. I've had more than 250,000 people now come to my website. It's elizabethwarren.com/debt. And they do the calculation and say, I see that under Liz's plan here, I'd be debt-free. They get rid of all my debt, or I'd be able to get rid of 90% of my debt, depending on how much debt they've got. And that's people not just who heard an idea, but who try it on for themselves and say, that touched my life. Same kind of thing with childcare. I'm putting up something now at elizabethwarren.com/kids. And people can go on, check out how it would affect them and the money they have to spend on childcare. The idea I want people to see is what I figured out. It took me a long time to figure it out.
What was that?
But government matters. The difference between a government on your side and a government on the side of the billionaires touches your life every single day.
But does it make you nervous that watching Hillary, you see a lot of women didn't support Hillary at that time? And it's crazy because I have 3 daughters. Charlamagne has 3 daughters. And I like the fact that a woman, like my daughter can see that a woman can be president. But a lot of women did not ride with her, which was strange. Does that make you nervous at all?
She did win the
I
popular
agree with him.
vote.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that because she won the popular vote.
Maybe not as many white women.
And it was some Russian interference. So we don't really know.
And you want to get rid of the Electoral College, right?
Yes. I want every vote to count.
Right.
I was down in Jackson, Mississippi when I talked about that. I want to see change. And I want to see part of that change is to get democracy to work again. Yeah, I want to get rid of the Electoral College because I want a candidate for president to have to go out there and fight for every vote.
And it won't be true power to the people until the votes actually do matter.
Right? Absolutely.
It seems like it's so obsolete to have an Electoral College now because we can see that it doesn't reflect individuals' votes.
Well,
and that's why people feel like sometimes they look at it and they're like, well, voting doesn't matter because, you see that Hillary won the popular vote, but still lost because of the Electoral College.
That's right, by a couple of million. And people just say, I'm not in this. No one's down here fighting for my vote. I've been to 18 states and Puerto Rico. I'm going to keep going to more states because I think that's what we got to do. We got to get everybody engaged in this. Right. I think of this as a moment when it's not just our economic future that's on the line. It's not just the corruption in government, a government that's working for the rich and the powerful. It's our democracy. And so I support a constitutional amendment to protect the right of every American citizen to vote and to get that vote counted, to roll back this voter suppression stuff and the gerrymandering, and to put some muscle behind that at the federal level. Because here's the deal. Everything we've talked about this morning, if our government in Washington really reflected the views of the majority of Americans, right now we'd have a federal law in place to protect the rights that are guaranteed under Roe versus Wade. We just have that because that's what most people want, right? Right now, the ultra millionaires, the top 0.1% would be pitching in a little more so that we would be helping our kids get an education without getting crushed by student loan debt. And we'd be acting on climate. It's these core pieces that right now there's too much money in the opposite direction and too many years now of the bazillionaires who are represented in every decision that gets made in Washington. It's like how we started, you're talking about the tax thing a minute ago.
It would balance out if votes actually mattered.
Yeah.
If votes actually mattered, it would balance out.
Yeah. Elizabeth has to go.
Well, I just want to know, when is the last time you just said to yourself, I'm tired of this shit? Like, it's just too much.
No, I don't
right before
feel
she
that
got in
way.
here.
No, but I don't feel that way because, look, you got 2 choices for me. I can sit on the sidelines or I can be in the fight, and I'd rather be in the fight.
Oh, one thing. Why won't they impeach Donald Trump? Why won't Nancy Pelosi move on that?
I got to tell you, this is not how I see it. So I sat down. I didn't run for president so that I could do impeachment. I ran for these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But the day the Mueller report came out, I started reading it that afternoon. I read it all into the night. I'm reading it into the wee hours of the morning. When I hit page 448, the last page, I said, okay, it is clear to me that 3 things happened. The first one is a hostile foreign government attacked our 2016 election with the purpose of helping Donald Trump. The second thing that report shows is candidate Trump welcomed that help. And the third thing that report shows is when the federal government tried to investigate those first 2 things,
Obstruction.
Donald Trump did everything he could to slip it sideways, to stop it, to punch it in the nose, and to obstruct justice. Obstruction of justice is a crime. If he were any other human being in this country, he would have been walked out in handcuffs for what he did. But because he is president of the United States, Mueller made it clear he believed he could not indict him. It is up to Congress, and Congress's tool is impeachment. Look, I got to the end of that, and that very day, I said, I read the report. Anybody who reads the report, Republican or Democrat, this is bigger than politics. We need to start impeachment proceedings. And it's not just because of this president. It's what does it mean for the next president and the one after that and the one after that?
You have to set an example. You can't just do anything.
Exactly.
You can't just break the law.
No one in this country is above the law.
Are you ready to get nasty with him, though?
Why does
Oh, you ready?
It's already happening.
You know, we gotta. But part of what we gotta do, I laugh and say that we gotta talk about the stuff, our vision of what this America could look like. That we could build an America of our best values. Start with 2 cents, and we could make a difference in the lives, literally, of tens of millions of people. This is our chance. Come 2020.
Well, you know, you're just going to keep calling you Pocahontas and keep trying to bring up the fact that he thinks you lied about being Native American.
Joe Biden's a good distraction for him right now, though. It feels like his energy is shifted to Joe Biden.
You know, but we have to, as Democrats and frankly as Americans, we got to decide whether we're going to, chase him down, everything he says, or are we actually going to talk about how we build a future?
Let's push forward.
Are we going to let him just turn everybody against everybody, or are we going to say, no, man, we get it. We get that this whole economy is rigged. It's rigged to help the rich, and it's leaving way too many people behind, and we have the power. We get out there and vote. We got the power to help each other. That's exactly right.
Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You sure you just don't want to smack his toupee off one time?
Just
once.
Well, thank you, Liz.
That's assault. You can't assault a sitting president, Ms. Warren.
2020 presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.